Brian Kelly explains Harold Perkins' absence from practice on Monday and an update on the offensive line battle. You'll hear it next. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe as always. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. LSU was on the practice field on Tuesday. No media access. However, we did have an opportunity to speak to Brian Kelly after that practice, and there were a couple of very important updates Brian Kelly shared with us that I wanted to make sure we pass along. So get your pen and your notepad out. It's a pretty good explanation here from Brian Kelly on some of the things that people have been wondering about. Now, most notably, if you remember, go back with me. If you're an everydayer, shout out. You heard Monday's practice report. We only got 15 minutes, but in those 15 minutes, it was pretty eventful. Harold Perkins was not there. Whit Weeks was present, but only wearing a helmet, gym shorts, tennis shoes, standing behind the defense, basically taking mental reps. And then Michael Van Buren was seen with his index and middle finger taped together and not throwing. So Colin Hurley was actually running with the twos on Monday. Well, right out of the chute, Wilson Alexander, the advocate, he got the mic first. So he started by asking about Michael Van Buren, then followed up with updates on Whit Weeks and Harold Perkins. So this is a short clip, but they get all three of them in, so I'll play it for you here from Brian Kelly.
No, he got the index finger jammed on his right hand. He'll be thrown tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, we had an X-ray, MRI, no damage. He was just sore, so we've shut him down a little bit, but he'll be back. He did light throwing. He'll do a throwing program in the afternoon today, and then we'll have him back out tomorrow.
And then Whit not practicing yesterday, what's the reason?
Yeah, load management for Whit, yeah.
Harold too, or what was his situation?
No, he had a personal day. He had some things he had to take care of, but he was back out there today.
So I guess we could probably take those in reverse order of significance. Harold Perkins, it was a personal day. I think the fear that many people had was that coming off the scrimmage on Saturday, the next time out on Monday, Harold Perkins isn't there. People maybe feared the worst. Our information that his absence was not injury related. We shared that with you, and Brian Kelly confirmed a personal matter for Harold Perkins to attend to. He was back at practice on Tuesday. All is well. The load management with Whit Weeks is something that is interesting. And should we have the opportunity to ask a follow-up at further media availability, we'll do that. Because it appears that Whit is the only player right now that they're taking that approach with, that sort of load management, as Brian Kelly has termed it. Whit was out there on Friday, the day before the scrimmage, but was not participating. He scrimmaged on Saturday. And then on Monday, we saw him basically out there just taking mental reps, not participating. There's no indication whatsoever that he's limited. Every time we've seen him, he's running full speed. There's no I observed him Monday on the exercise bike, so you wouldn't think there's any type of doing sprints on the exercise bike. There's any type of thing. There's no reason to believe circumstantially that there's anything other than what Brian Kelly said. It's just load management. They understand that Whit Weeks is a guy that they're going to have to ask to play most likely every defensive snap. He's never going to come off the field. We mentioned it in our prior episode. There are two guys on this team that feel irreplaceable, aside from Garrett Nussmeier, and it's Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks. And it's not to say you don't have depth at linebacker. You do, but you don't have another player close to Weeks or Perkins. If Jordan Gilbert is backing up Harold Perkins, that is a massive drop-off from a guy that's an All-American to Jordan Gilbert. Same on the inside. If you go from Whit Weeks to Devon Keys, I think Devon Keys could be a fantastic player, but Whit Weeks is a preseason first-team All-American. So those two guys you've got to keep healthy, engaged, and ready to roll. So that's fantastic news. And then Van Buren, I was told it was a jam, like dislocated situation, and he was throwing actually on Monday lightly when the media was kindly asked to leave. But Brian Kelly saying there that Van Buren's throwing on Tuesday. He's on a throwing program. They'll ramp him back up. It is important to note, if you missed the previous note that we mentioned, they changed the media availability this week. Today, Tuesday, was supposed to be we're supposed to watch the full practice today, and they ended up not allowing us to watch practice today. Instead, they're going to allow us in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night at 7:25 to watch the scrimmage on Saturday night. So that's a heck of a trade-off that I'll take. So we'll be sure to get you a full update from what we see Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. That will include, obviously, an update on the offensive line, because this is what I asked Brian Kelly during the media availability on Tuesday about the offensive line rotation. Because the other big story coming out of Monday, and again, we only got to watch 15 minutes, but in those 15 minutes, we saw a lot. And the other part of that was Carius Curne, the 5-star freshman offensive lineman running with the first team at right tackle. Now, the other part of that is when they were running the first team, it was Paul Mabenga at left guard. Remember, Mabenga started the last 5 games of the season at left guard a season ago when Garrett Dellinger was injured. So far to this point in fall camp, we've seen DJ Chester, last year starting center, as the left guard. Paul Mabenga and Cohen Eccles had been battling. I guess Mabenga had been backing up Chester at left, and Cohen Eccles had been backing up Josh Thompson at right guard. Well, earlier in the week, late last week, we saw Cohen Eccles getting some first-team reps on the left side, and now it's Carius Curne taking first-team reps at right tackle. And so, you're 12 at this point. You're 12 days away, 11 days away from the season opener, and you still have that much of a shuffle on the offensive line, which does come across as a bit unsettling. And I asked Brian Kelly specifically about Curne taking first-team reps at right tackle, and what they're trying to achieve with this much rotation this close to the game. And he actually backtracked and told us there's 3 jobs already that are locked down and 2 are still up for grabs.
If I could circle back, Tyree is going to be our starting left tackle. I think there's still a battle between Paul and Cohen Eccles, for one of the guard positions. Justin has nailed down one of the guard positions. Braylon has nailed down the center, excuse me, the center position. And I think there's still a battle for that next tackle position, which would be the right tackle. So we moved Carius over there to compete with Weston, to see who's our best. And maybe it's both of them, Matt, more than anything else. We wanted to see that maybe it's a combination or maybe it's one or the other. There wasn't enough competition there. We feel like Ori's coming along, but he wasn't there yet. So we wanted to create a little bit more competition at that right tackle position. Does that make sense?
That is a mouthful that we have to digest. So just to recap, 3 starting jobs are solidified. Tyree Adams is your left tackle. Braylon Moore is your starting center. He said Justin, he meant Josh. Josh Thompson. Brian Kelly's sometimes not been the best with names. Josh Thompson is starting, he said, at one of the guard spots. Now, he's been playing exclusively at right guard, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that's where Josh Thompson is going to play. So that's 3 of your starters, which means your left guard spot and your right tackle spot are still to be determined. Now, if you listen closely, what Brian Kelly said there was Paul Mabenga and Cohen Eccles are battling for a guard spot, and that Weston Davis had basically been exclusively the right tackle, and they didn't feel there was enough competition there. That's why they were giving Carius Curne reps to see if they could push Weston Davis, just to see if they could generate some competition. Ori Williams, they don't feel like is ready. By the way, Ori was on this show earlier in the summer, and is a guy that came in as a tackle, played guard in the spring, actually said he felt a little more comfortable at guard than tackle, but it feels like Carius Curne is probably past Ori Williams now as one of the swing tackles. But notice an omission there by Brian Kelly. He mentioned Tyree Adams, Braylon Moore, Josh Thompson as 3 starters. He mentioned Cohen Eccles, Paul Mabenga battling for the left guard job, and Weston Davis, Carius Curne battling for the right tackle job. He didn't mention DJ Chester. DJ Chester, who's the only returning starter from a year ago, who started all 13 games at center, who had been basically running exclusively as your first team left guard through all the way up through camp. I mean, in spring, Chester was playing center and guard. In training camp here so far in fall camp, Chester has been exclusively with the first team at left guard and running second team center. So we did get a follow-up in from Brian Kelly on what this means for DJ Chester. You'll hear that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got your eye on a big-name quarterback or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. Flex option, total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by DripDrop. DripDrop, if you're trying to stay on top of your routine, maybe you know it. When you're on top of your hydration, everything works better. Energy, mood, focus, even your skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why you will love DripDrop. DripDrop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium, electrolytes, and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. Find your favorite flavor today. Keep a few packets in your backpack, your work bag. It'll save you from that midday crash. Right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. It's just head to DripDrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. And we're also brought to you by our friends at OpenPhone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Maybe you juggle 2 phones just to keep your business and personal calls separate. OpenPhone solves that instantly. And the AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, captures leads, so you will never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. And finally, it's always our pleasure to tell you about our friends at Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. Tell you about my experience all the time, but Our Lady of the Lake, they're world-class physicians, trainers, take care not only of the LSU student athletes, but also as part of the Student Health Center, take care of LSU students on campus. And with their standalone hospitals and clinics, take care of everyday champions like you and me. My own personal experience, my son has been a patient at Our Lady of the Lake Children's Hospital, seeing a lot of their specialists there. Certainly, my own personal care, my doctor, Curtis Chastain, part of the Our Lady of the Lake Men's Health Clinic. Maybe it's cancer care, or it's for your heart health, stroke, as I mentioned, pediatrics. There's so many different ways that Our Lady of the Lake is shaping the future of healthcare. It's Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. So as we mentioned, DJ Chester was not mentioned by Brian Kelly. He was omitted there, running through the starting offensive line. 3 jobs locked down. Tyree Adams at left tackle, Braylon Moore at center, Josh Thompson at 1 guard. He mentioned there's competition. Eccles, Mabenga at the other guard, and then Weston Davis and Carius Curne at right tackle. So the follow-up was asked Brian Kelly about DJ Chester's omission and what that means for the guy who started 13 games for LSU a season ago.
In some ways, it's a disservice to him because we got him playing center, guard. He's playing a little bit of right tackle. He's competing for a starting position as well. But we can't put them all out there. So somebody's going to have to be in a rotational position, whether it's Paul or Cohen or DJ, Weston or Carius. Those are the guys that are all going to eventually play. I don't think you're just going to see 5 guys trotting out there every single play. I think you're going to see some other guys definitely getting in the game as well.
And the last part there is what gives me the most pause and anxiety about this team. I've said it many times that I believe LSU has plenty of talent on the offensive line. Look, we're talking about DJ Chester. Do you realize 24/7 Sports rated DJ Chester the number one interior offensive lineman in the country when he signed with LSU in 2023? In the composite, he was the number 7 interior offensive lineman in the country. He is a massive human who started 13 games for you a season ago and is certainly now at guard in a much more natural position than at center. And Braylon Moore has been outstanding at center. My hesitation is I can't help but think back to the first game Brian Kelly ever coached. When Brian Kelly coached LSU against Florida State in that opener in 2022 in the Superdome, and Garrett Dellinger, who had never played center, was starting against Florida State in that game in the Superdome. And you go back to the very first drive of the season, LSU moves right down into the red zone, and an errant snap killed that drive, and LSU ended up settling for a field goal. And of course, we know what happened. There was a big rotation. By week 3, Emory Jones had basically been supplanted Frazier there at right tackle. Frazier moved into guard. Will Campbell was your starter at left tackle. And we know Dellinger moved out to guard, and then those guys stayed like that for the rest of their careers. But it took you 3 weeks to get there. And if LSU had the opportunity to play Southeastern and Louisiana Tech in the first 2 weeks, you could run these guys out there in rotation against someone else and see how it looks and maybe feel much better about going to Clemson. The challenge is when Brian Kelly says at the end there, don't expect to see just 5 guys in their spot every play. There's going to be rotation. I mean, I would love to tell you, shoulder shrug, NBD, it's going to be great. I just don't know that I believe that. Now, we've talked about Clemson, and yes, Clemson does return a lot in their front 7. Their linebackers last year weren't great, and their defensive line are talented players, certainly good pass rushers, but they did allow 5 yards a carry last year. They were ranked in the 90s nationally in rushing yards per attempt allowed. So if you want something to lean on, it's that. While yes, Clemson has a very experienced and talented defensive front, they were not very good against the run a year ago. And they have a new defensive coordinator in Tom Allen coming in. And so maybe for Clemson, with a new defensive coordinator, new scheme, new terminology, a run defense that wasn't very good a year ago, maybe that does give LSU a little bit of an edge there, or maybe neutralizes a little bit of the angst. But I think the bigger problem, bigger question is going to be keeping Garrett Nussmeier upright. And if Clemson's stunting and doing a lot of exotic looks, can 5 guys that haven't played a game together execute together? And if you're worried about that, you should be. It's why I've continued to say I would love it. If LSU was playing Clemson in week 3, I'd feel dramatically different about this game. But even with all the talent that LSU has, and they have plenty, with so many new pieces, going to a true road environment makes this very unenviable. The more I keep thinking about this game, it's going to be one where LSU's defense has got to show up in a massive way. If LSU's defense shows up in a massive way and can limit Clemson to, say, 17, do it like South Carolina went to Clemson a year ago and won 17-14. If LSU's defense can show up in a massive way and keep this game a teens or low 20s game, it gives you a great opportunity to hit a big play in the passing game, which LSU is certainly capable of, putting together a game-winning drive at the end. But if you're going to go up to Clemson and need that offense to be firing on all cylinders from snap one, I just don't know that I believe that that's going to be realistic with all of the turnovers still now on the offensive line. Listen, I still think, and I'm going to maintain this, and I might be proven wrong. I'm not telling you something I know. We'll have a much better sense of this on Saturday after the scrimmage. I still think that on snap one against Clemson, it's going to be the guys that we just mentioned, the 3 starters that Brian Kelly mentioned, Tyree Adams at left, Braylon Moore at center, Josh Thompson at right guard. I think Weston Davis is going to be right tackle. And I think DJ Chester is going to get the start at left guard because he started 13 games a year ago. He's been on the road starting at Florida. He's been on the road starting road games in the SEC at Texas A&M. So that experience is going to help him tremendously. Now, Paul Mabenga started 5 games a year ago as well, so he has that experience. But Mabenga, Chester, Mabenga, somebody there at the left guard spot feels like that's where it's going to start. But where does it finish? Not only week 1, or game 1, but week 2 and 3 and 4 and down the line. But Brian Kelly shedding a little light there on some of the rotation and why we saw it at Monday's practice. Again, no more media availability until Saturday, but very much looking forward to being in Tiger Stadium Saturday night to watch that scrimmage. And of course, we'll tell you how it goes. So you want to hear that? Make sure you're subscribed. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.